early on in Ursula K. Le Guin's sixth Earthsea novel, we're going to see the importance of one of the characters, Tehanu, who was formerly named Therru in the fourth novel, Tehanu, in the last chapter of which it's revealed that she is herself a dragon. She is called daughter by the oldest of all dragons, Khalesin. And she's going to play a very important role in this sixth Earthsea novel as well. By this time, she is no longer just a girl. She's somebody in her 20s. She's coming with her mother, Tehanu, at the behest of the king to give them some advice about the issues that they're facing with the dragons. And some other things are going to get mixed in there as well. Already very early on at the council and at the court, we find that Alder brings a message from Ged that turns out not to really be a message as such, but rather a set of questions, an enigma about the dry land and who goes there, and about the wall of stones. So she's given these questions, and then they start to talk about the dragons as well. And one of the things that is being asked of her is what she can, in fact, do. And this comes up in the discussion that they're having. Before the king asks her something, there's a story about the dragon, or also the girl, who will be called Orm Irian. And Tehanu says, "Call her, oh, call her." And she says this to Alder, or rather to the wizard Onyx. And Tehanu says, "What is it? What is it, Tehanu?" And Tehanu stares around them. "Call her here." She looked at the king. "Can you call her?" And the king says, I don't have any such power. Maybe the patterner of Roke, maybe you yourself. And Tehanu says, No. I am not like her. I have no wings. And this is just a simple sentence, but it's something that is fraught with many implications. She is one of the dragon kind, but she doesn't have wings. And we're going to find out that wings turn out to be something quite important later on. We also know from the story of the woman of Kamei that there were, in fact, winged human beings. And so Lebannen says, I can't do anything about this. Tehanu turns around and faces the king and says, "I'm sorry, I have to be alone. I'll think about what my father said. I'll try to answer what he asked, but I have to be alone." And then a little bit later, she is going to be asked by the king to do several things. So the first thing is he says that, "Tehanu, it may be that you alone in my kingdom can help me. If you can call to these dragons as you called to Khalesin, if you have any power over them, if you can speak to them and ask why they war on my people, will you do so? So can you bring these dragons here to speak with us so we can find out why they're attacking our farms and villages?" And what we find, interestingly enough, is so the young woman shrank from his words, turning towards her mother, right? As she did when she was a little girl. Tehanu did not offer her any shelter. She stood unmoving. After a while, she said, "Tehanu, long ago I told you, when a king speaks to you, you answer. You were a child then and didn't answer. You're not a child now." So what we're getting to see in this is Tehanu being pushed into real adulthood. And it's not adulthood like most of us face. It's one that has some incredible demands. So Tehanu says, "I can't call to them. I don't know them." Lebannen says, "Can you call Khalesin?" She shook her head. "Too far away. I don't know where." And then Tehanu said, "But you are Khalesin's daughter. Can you not speak to these dragons?" And she says, "I don't know." So Tehanu doesn't know her own capabilities. She doesn't know whether she can help the situation. Now things start to take another turn, and another question gets asked of her, one that was already being formulated, but now is being made explicit. Lebannen says, If there is any chance, Tehanu, that they'll talk to you, that you can talk to them, I beg you to take that chance. For I can't fight them and don't know their language, and how can I find out what they want of us from creatures who can destroy me with a breath, with a look? Will you speak for me, for us? She was silent, then so faintly he could barely hear it. She said, yes. Then make ready to travel with me. We leave by 4th hour of the evening. My people will bring you to the ship. I thank you, and I thank you, Tenar. And what's going on there? So Lebannen has said a number of different things in that. First of all, we're dealing with very dangerous creatures. They could destroy me just by breathing. I'd like you, young woman, to go and talk with them in my place, because maybe they'll talk to you. Maybe you can find out what's going on. It's going to be incredibly dangerous. And what we see is that Tehanu is not so much afraid of the danger of the dragons. It's more that she just doesn't know what she is able to do, whether she'll be able to do anything helpful. Tenar, of course, is quite afraid. And we find out Tenar has a dream. She lay awake in the wide bed and saw before her mind's eye over and over again the same scene, a road and Tehanu walking on it alone, and a knot, a net, a black writhing, coiling mass descending from the sky, dragons swarming, fire licking and streaming from that at her hair burning, her clothes burning. No, Tenar said, no, it will not happen. She would force her mind away from that scene until she saw it again, the road and Tehanu walking on it alone, and the black burning knot in the sky coming closer. We know that dragons actually do, in fact, prey upon each other, because in the third book, when they were deprived of their speech and rationality, that's exactly what they did. Dragons killed dragons. And maybe Tenar thinks Tehanu will be killed by these other dragons who aren't Khalasin and could be quite dangerous. As a matter of fact, the king will say a little bit later, he's talking to Tenar, it's she who protects us, he said. Alone? Tenar says. Don't fear for her, he says. She is the dragon's daughter, the dragon's sister. She goes where we can't. Don't fear for her, Tenar. She bowed her head in acceptance. I thank you for bringing her safe back to me for a while. And this is after Tehanu has had her first encounter with an unfamiliar dragon. This is on the Isle of Havnor. And what we find is she is along with the king and calls down a dragon from the sky. Tehanu raised her good hand, pointing. Look, she said, look, a spark from a bonfire, a burning cinder rising over the black line of the pass, an eagle of flame soaring, a dragon flying straight at them. Tenar stood up in her stirrups and let out a piercing, scraping cry like a seabird's or a hawk's scream, but it was a word, one word. Medau. The great creature drew nearer with terrible speed, its long, thin wings beating almost lazily. It had lost the reflection of fire and looked black or bronze-colored in the growing light. Mind your horses, Tehanu said, and just then Lebannen's gray gelding saw the dragon and started violently. He could control it, but behind him one of the other horses let out a neigh of terror, and he heard them trampling in the handlers' voices. Again, Tehanu cried out that word. The dragon veered in its flight, slowed, came on, stopped, and hovered in the air about 50 feet from them. Medau, Tehanu called, and the answer came like an echo prolonged, Medau. What does it mean, Lebannen asked, bending to Onyx. Sister, brother, the wizard whispered. So this is a greeting, a vocative saying, oh, sister, brother, kin of mine, I'm greeting you, I'm recognizing you. And it's going both ways. And what we see is the dragon connects up with and talks with Tehanu. So there's a brilliant description here. Tehanu was off her horse, tossed the reins to Yane, was walking forward down the slope to where the dragon hovered, its long wings beating quick and short like a hovering hawk's. But these wings were 50 feet from tip to tip, and as they beat, they made a sound like kettle drums or rattles of brass. As she came closer to it, a little curl of fire escaped from the dragon's long, long-toothed open mouth. She held up her hand, not the slender brown hand, but the burned one, the claw. The scarring of her arm and shoulder kept her from raising it fully. She could reach barely as high as her head. The dragon sank a little in the air, lowered its head, and touched her hand with its lean, flared, scaled snout. Like a dog, an animal greeting and sniffing, Lebannen thought, like a falcon stooping to the wrist, like a king bowing to a queen. So they are now engaged with each other. And there's still peril, right? But what happens is talking instead of fighting or killing. Tehanu spoke, the dragon spoke. Another exchange, a pause, the dragon spoke at length. Onyx listened intently. Onyx can actually, is a wizard, knows the true speech that they're speaking in. One more exchange of words, a wisp of smoke from the dragon's nostrils, a stiff, imperious gesture of the woman's crippled, withered hand. She spoke clearly 2 words. Bring her, the wizard translated in a whisper. And then the dragon takes off. The wizard says it called her daughter of the eldest. And they find out from Tehanu what's actually going on. The dragons are angry. We also find out that Irian is being sent for and will be coming shortly to Parley. And so this is where the dragon shows up, Orm Irian, and we have an exchange now between Tenar and Orm Irian, who's going to play a very important role. Here we go. The dragon had alighted on the pavement and was furling its wings with a loud metallic rattle as the king came out. Where it came down, its talons had scratched grooves in the marble. That's how powerful these monsters are. The long gold-mailed head swung around. The dragon looked at the king. The king looked down and did not meet its eyes, but he stood straight and spoke clearly. Orm Irian, welcome, I am Lebannen. Agni Lebannen, said the great hissing voice, greeting him as Orm Embar had greeted him long ago in the farthest west before he was a king. Onyx and Tehanu had run out onto the terrace. One guard had his sword out, and Lebannen tells him put the sword down. And once again, Tehanu says that word, Madau, sister, brother, whispered, coming up beside Lebannen, her gaze unwavering on the dragon. The great creature's head swung around again, and the immense amber eye in a socket of shining wrinkled scales gazed back, unblinking. The dragon spoke. Onyx, understanding, murmured to the king what it said, and Tehanu replied, Kalessin's daughter, my sister, you do not fly. And Tehanu says, I cannot change. I am not that point in my development. And so Orm Irian says, well, should I change? And she says, for a while, if you will. The dragon turns itself into a woman, and then they can begin with the actual conversation. She was young, tall, and strongly built, dark-haired, wearing a farm woman's shift and trousers, barefoot. The little thing, she said in the common speech, and she laughed. She looked at Tehanu. It's like putting on the shoes I wore when I was 5. And then the 2 women moved towards each other with a certain stateliness like that of armed warriors saluting their ships meeting at sea. They embraced. They drew apart and both turned to face the king. So Tehanu has done her task. She has spoken with the dragons at great danger to herself. As it turns out, not so much great danger. Danger feared, but danger that's not there because she is one of the dragon kind. She is the daughter of Kalessin, and they are able to engage and greet each other. But this requires an overcoming of whatever fear or reluctance or dissatisfaction with her own ability to change, an uncertainty about her own capacities. This is Tehanu, in effect, truly coming of age through taking on these tasks that Lebannen asks her to do.